If she's vanished, like, I want her back so bad. I want those kids back so bad.
A lie he repeated to investigators.
My babies are gone. And I put my hands around my wife's neck and did that same thing.
In August 2018, a disturbing case of triple family murder sent the United States reeling in shock. 34-year-old pregnant Shanann Watts and her two daughters, Bella and Celeste, were strangled and smothered to death by Chris Watts, husband and father to the lady and young girls. What started as a slight argument between the couple led to a tragic ending and a chain of lies and deceit. This is the story of how a man murdered his family and dumped their bodies in the most repulsive of ways. This murder case first took off in their apartment in Frederick, Colorado, in the United States, where Shanann Watts lived with her husband Chris Watts and their two daughters, Bella, aged 4, and Celeste, 3. The then 33-year-old Christopher Watts worked in the oil and gas industry and was gainfully employed at Anadarko Petroleum. Shanann Watts was an entrepreneur, wife to Chris Watts, and a devoted mother to their two daughters. She met Chris in 2010, and they got married in November 2012. With over 6 years of marital bliss and no recorded signs of prior physical abuse, Shanann Watts became pregnant with their third child and was 15 weeks gone when the worst happened. In the early hours of August 13th, the flames of a despicable incident sparked in their Colorado apartment. The couple had just finished making love to each other when Chris broke the news. He wanted a divorce. Shanann could not comprehend the sudden need for separation and started repeatedly asking if there was someone else. Refusing to admit to the presence of a mistress in his life, he rolled over, got on his pregnant wife, and strangled her till her body became lifeless. The couple's 4-year-old daughter, Bella, walked in just in time to see her mother's lifeless body being rolled into a bedsheet and proceeded to ask her dad what was wrong. Chris told her that her mother was sick, and the child burst into tears. Little did the young child know that the brutality from her father had just begun. After killing his pregnant wife, Chris dragged the lifeless bedsheet-wrapped body down the stairs and placed her on the floor of the backseat of his work truck, a Ford F-250 pickup. Right after, he came into the house to pick up a crying Bella and Celeste, who just woke up and were clutching a blanket and a stuffed animal, and put them in the backseat as well. Chris drove for over 40 miles to his workplace at Anadarko Petroleum, where he worked as an operator for an oil and gas producer. Watts confessed that his girls asked, "What are you doing to Mommy?" as he pulled Shannann's body from the truck. He shifted his attention to Celeste and smothered her while Bella watched in shock. With Celeste dead, he turned to Bella and repeated the act on his first daughter with the same blanket while disregarding her heart-wrenching last words. Chris showed no mercy as he went on to dump the bodies of his dead daughters in 2 nearby oil tanks before proceeding to dig a shallow grave and bury their mother. The murderer, Chris Watts, drove home and acted like nothing happened, sweeping all evidence of the act away from sight. Perhaps everything would have remained that way had Shannann's colleague and friend, Nicole Atkinson, not reported them missing. The report was filed when Nicole noticed that Shanann had missed her doctor's appointment. Her friend and her daughters were not at home, and Shanann was not taking Nicole's or Christopher's calls or responding to their messages either. This was unlike Shanann, who was great at communication, especially because of the nature of her business. Nicole later made another call to the police, asking them to perform a welfare check. Authorities admit that on searching their Colorado home, Shanann's phone was found between the sofa cushions, her bag in the kitchen, and her car still parked on their property. The day after, Shanann and her children were declared missing. Appearing distraught before the camera as a man devastated by the unknown whereabouts of his family, Chris Watts made a heart-touching statement pleading for their safe return.
He told us a very different story when he talked to us the day after his family disappeared, pleading for them to come home.
If she's vanished, like, I want her back so bad. I want those kids back so bad.
Seeing his pitiable plea and excuse of Shanann running away with the kids after a fight, no one would imagine that Chris was lying through his teeth. But all that changed when his mistress, Nicole Kessinger, with whom he was cheating on his wife, reached out to the police. 2 days after Shanann was reported missing, Nicole, prompted by the news, told police about her affair with Chris and how he lied to her about the state of his marriage and Shanann's pregnancy. This confession from Chris's mistress led to an offsetting of different information that would later lead to the exposure of his heinous acts. When interrogated, Nicole said that Chris told her that he was in the process of separating from his wife, and this sent sparks of doubt to the police department, whom Chris had lied to about being deeply in love. It did not take long to spot rising inconsistencies in Chris's story as Shannon's close friend was interviewed.
She basically just said that she didn't know what's going on. He was acting weird. She hadn't seen him in 5 weeks. He wasn't touching her. They weren't cuddling. He wasn't holding her hand. Like, he wasn't sleeping in the same bed with her, which I find that really odd.
Nicole attested to Shanann confessing that things were no longer the same in her marriage, and when Shanann found out that she was pregnant with their third child months earlier, the couple spent over 6 weeks apart. By the time she returned, Chris was in a new secret relationship. So while there was no history of a record of physical abuse, all was not well with the Watts in their marriage. Nicole Atkinson's continued desperate search for her friend led to a shocking discovery. At around 5:18 a.m. on the day Shanann and the kids went missing, their neighbor's CCTV camera recorded Chris loading up something into his truck with his back to the camera. In Nicole's words, watching that footage gave her a really bad feeling, and she became more frantic in her search. The kitchen, bedroom, living room, Shanann and the kids were nowhere to be found, despite all her belongings being in place. Once his mistress reported her observation to the police, Chris Watts was formally accused of murder and arrested on the 15th of August. However, no one was ready for the chain of ugly lies this man was about to unleash. Upon interrogation, he claimed to need the help of the officers to make sure his family was found. Chris continually feigned having no knowledge or involvement in the disappearance of his pregnant wife and 2 girls until he failed the lie detector test. Shaken from his failure to convince the interrogator at his polygraph test, Chris requested to speak with his father. He then confessed to killing the late Shanann, but he was nowhere done with lying.
Lost it and choke her or... That's rage. I'm bad.
His account stated that he strangled his pregnant wife in a fit of rage after she killed both their daughters. Chris claimed that he revealed that he wanted a divorce, and Shanann got mad and threatened that he would never see his children again before she went ahead to kill them. Chris pled guilty to strangling her after that, before proceeding to dispose of the bodies. He blamed the horrifying act on rage and revealed where he had disposed of their bodies. The retrieval of the bodies of dead Shanann and her daughters left a scarring reaction on all who were following the news. The state of Colorado would never be the same again. The shallow grave where Shanann was buried was dug as soon as Chris confessed, but the task of searching the oil tanks for the little girls was left until morning. Once excavated, the site was said to have caused post-traumatic disorders for some of the officers who carried out the task of finding the bodies. Chris was sentenced to life in prison on multiple counts of first-degree murder, unlawful termination of a pregnancy, and tampering with a deceased human's body. As part of a plea deal to avoid the death penalty, Chris Watts pled guilty to all charges in November 2018. However, on the 18th of February 2019, Chris had a new story to tell investigators. He gave what the CBI, FBI, and Frederick Police Department believed to be his first full confession since the murder incident. The audio recording taken after Chris had spent 3 months in prison revealed that he was relaxed all through the conversation and very aware of what he was saying. In a calm voice, Chris acknowledged his previous story of Shanann killing the kids and confessed to not only being the sole perpetrator of all 3 murders, but the crime being a premeditated one. Retelling the gruesome murder details amid a bit of a chuckle, Chris admits how he strangled his wife after telling her he wanted a divorce and that she was never going to see her kids again. In an even more shocking revelation, Chris confessed that he had tried without success to kill his 2 girls prior to when he finally got his chance. This Colorado man had also attempted to cause a miscarriage for his wife by slipping her oxycodone when he found out about her pregnancy. Without pausing to show the slightest remorse, Watts recounted how Bella had suffered the most. She had seen him drag her mother in a wrapped bedsheet down the stairs after he lied that she was sick and needed to go to the hospital. 4-year-old Bella had also stood by and watched in horror as her sister Celeste was smothered to death by the man who was meant to protect them. Before Bella was smothered with the same blanket, Chris recalled that her final words to him were, "Daddy, no," before she was brutally killed. When asked if his mistress asked him to do this, he refuted vehemently but acknowledged that his desire to be with her may have contributed heavily to his actions. With each unfolding layer of the confession, authorities had more reason to shift in their seats, and the world saw more infuriating evidence to cause an uproar. What began as a couple madly in love quickly spiraled to the unleashing of unspeakable evil, blurring every form of sense. Chris was charged with further murder counts after his confession, a reiteration of the life in prison sentence, but this time without parole. One final detail further fanned the flames of all who followed the news of this devastating murder. While both families mourned the loss, Chris Watts showed no remorse of any kind. Instead, he talked about his mistress, Nicole Kessinger, with a tone of longing, wishing she would pick up his calls from prison so he could talk to her one more time.
Do you wish you could talk to her?
Maybe once, just to
Get some closure?
just to say like, hey, just once.
Yeah.
Just to say, hey, like, I'm sorry this all happened. I'm sorry. I'm not sure, like, what happened, like, afterwards, like, what you went through, like, if you had, like, counseling, if you're, like, different state, if you had to leave everything behind. I just wanted to let you know I'm sorry, and that's not something I ever saw in my life happening or happening to somebody else either.
Would you be alright if we told her that?
That's fine.
Do you want us to? You want us not to?
And if she would want to even talk to you guys, like, I'm not sure if someone contacted her, but I'm sure she'd answer your phone call more than an attorney phone call that she didn't want to go answer.